Hello again and welcome to Shed Talk, my weekly magazine video series looking at the keeping, breeding and showing of cage birds, with a particular focus as usual on the exhibition style budgerigar, and that again will be the main focus in this episode because that's where most of the work is going on, or most of the interesting stuff is actually happening, is out here or in here in the main budgerigar shed. So we will be focusing on here, and a bit like the last few episodes, it's mainly focused now around getting everything ready for that breeding season, the new breeding season for the budgerigars. We've looked at how I pair up. We've done a bit more pairing up with a few more birds, and now it's time to take the birds the next step further and start adding the bits and pieces to the breeding cage to enable them to go down and start breeding. So in this episode, that's what I'd like to do. I'm going to just very quickly run through how I treat the birds once they're in the breeding cage, and go about adding the nest box and the other bits and pieces that are in the breeding cage with the birds from day one. Right, let's get on with that then. Well, you can probably see from behind me that the breeding cages are still in various stages of setup. So cage number one, which was the pair we put down right at the very beginning of the breeding season, so it's about a week ahead of the other birds that we paired up in the last episode. So they've had a week in the breeding cage just on their own with no nest box, which is how you can see the other ones, the other birds that are behind me. They're still going through that early process of just making sure that they are happy in the breeding cage and they get used to it before I add the nest box. I like to give them about a week. Sometimes it's a little bit less, particularly if I'm well into the breeding season. I've got birds that are in the flight that have already paired up. They probably will get a little bit less than a week without it, but normally I like to give them about a week without the nest box, and then I add the nest box after that week. That just gives me a time, or gives the pair a chance to get used to each other, and gives me a chance to keep an eye on them and to make any, if I am going to make any final adjustments to the breeding pairs. If I've got a pair that's completely incompatible and constantly fighting, it gives me a chance to deal with them without actually having added the nest box. I can get a good look at them. So after about a week, I will add the nest box to the cage, and at that stage the nest box is just added but is still closed, and you can see the one behind me. That nest box is still closed, and what I mean by that is I've turned it round so the hen can't get in. So this is just to encourage the hen to to get into that instinct. I find that the hen will start coming up to the nest box, try to get in, it will start chewing at the entrance, and I just think that encourages the hen to come into breeding condition and to be ready for when I do open it. Now I keep it shut again at the beginning of the breeding season, normally for about a week, unless I can see that the hen is really desperate to go in. Now the hen in cage number one, the moment I added the nest box, was chewing at that nest box trying to get in, so it's probably going to be 3 or 4 days, I think, I will leave that nest box closed, and then I will open the nest box up and let the hen go in. So we will look at that process in this episode. So that's the next steps for me in terms of how I go about moving from just pairing up to having a nest box that is fully opened. Before I show you how I go about the nest box preparation bits that I add to it, I just thought I'd quickly run through what actually the other stuff that I have in the cage from day one, just so you can see what the cage looks like. So the cages are all set up identically. As you know, I use all wire cages, and my only thought process around that, apart from they're reasonably easy to keep clean, and there's less attraction for mite on an all-wire cage, but also I think that if the birds can see the other birds, it just makes it feel a little bit more natural for them, a bit like in the flight. We know that budgerigars, in the wild, breed in big groups, and we also know, that if you're breeding in a big aviary, the birds tend to respond to each other in terms of that breeding process. So if one cockbird and hen starts to mate, it encourages the others, and I think that works very similarly in the all-wire cages. So that's one of the reasons why I use them. As I say, each of the cages are set up exactly identically, so and everything is in virtually the same place. So I have all the drinkers, and I use these blue ones. You can see them behind me, blue Flowmatic drinkers. They're not too big, which means that I don't, I'm not wasting too much of the additives that I put in the water. So, and most of you will know that I give them, they get a couple of days with just normal water in the bottle, and then they get a couple of days with an anti-mite treatment in the bottle, and then they get a couple of days with some Avigold in the water as well. So and that sort of rotates basically around a week or so. So that's what they get in the water supply, and by using the smaller drinkers, it means that I'm not wasting too much of those additives that are going into there. So they also then have a little seed dish which contains my Hafes, and I think it's called Breeders Mix, which is a 50-50 seed mix, so 50% canary and 50% a millet. Looks a bit mixed to me, but it just says millet on the thing, so it's a mixed sort of millet, 50%, 50%, which is what the staple diet they would get in the main flight. So they get that in there. I suppose it's fairly obvious, but this goes on the opposite side to where the nest box is, because if I put it under the nest box, the chances are when a bird's going in and out of the nest box, it's going to poop all over it. So so that's why. So the opposite side to the nest box, I have one of these. I do find occasionally, you'll get a bird that will sit in it and clear it out. I find particularly the youngsters, when they first jump the nest box, for some reason seem to like the feel of kicking your seed all over the place. So you have to persevere with that. But generally I use these little seed dishes. And then the other thing that's in there is a dish that contains two type of things. They get a scoop of soft food, which goes into the smaller side of this tray. You can see it in the short clip here. So they get a scoop of soft food that goes in there. The soft food contains some additional stuff, so it contains all of like the soft veg and egg food and that sort of stuff. But I also put in the soft food some grit in there, which just a little bit of grit goes in there that they can pick through as they're picking up the soft food. They will get that grit. It's a mineralized grit, so they're capable of eating it. And then the other thing they will get in there as well is they will get a calcium supplement going in there, and then they will also get in there a probiotic additive into the soft food as well. So those are generally the additives. I did do a video on my soft food, so if you want to know exactly what's in there, you can go back and have a look at that. So that's what goes into the soft food, and when there's just the two of them in there, they'll get one scoop of that. As the chicks start to hatch, I will add a little bit more depending on the number of chicks, just so that there's plenty of soft food in there for them, for the birds to feed to the chicks. They do get a similar soft food in the main flight for most of the year, so they are used to the soft food when they go in there. and they're very quick to start picking that up and eating it. So, and then in the other side of the tray is the again a single scoop of tonic seed, and that again, that's a Have's tonic seed. Really does smell very, very nice. Contains all the aniseed in that. I know some people will mix that in with the normal seed, but I do serve it separate. And again, they will go down and pick through that. In most cases, there's still a little bit left at the end of the day, so that will just get recycled back through the system. So so that's the cages. There's nothing else in the cages, just 2 perches. I've said it before, I use plastic perches. I know some people will, you know, are not fans of plastic perches. I've used them, never had a problem with the bird's feet using plastic perches. So that's what's in there. Nice and easy again to keep clean, and they're nice sturdy perches that are fit for the size of the cage. So that's the cage set up. There's 1 perch close to the nest box and 1 perch on the other side. I've never had a problem. I know some people will say, you know, just put 1 perch in there, particularly at the beginning, just to make sure that the cockbird and the hen are sat together, and you know, there's less room for, it encourages them to mate. I've never had a real problem with that, so I always tend to keep 2 perches in there. Let me know your thoughts on that, whether you put 2 or 1 perch in. I just think the 2 perches encourages the bird to exercise just a little bit, and having the soft food again on the bottom of the cage and the seed dish at the bottom, the lower part of the cage, it does, again, it encourages the birds to have that little bit of exercise, and it's not as much as in the flight, but means that they're moving from the bottom of the cage up onto the perch and so forth. I mentioned about at the beginning about the seed dish not being underneath the nest box when you add the nest box to it. Likewise, I tried to keep the seed dish as far away from the perches as possible, but inevitably, you know, there will be a hen that will decide that she's going to mess up the seed dish, but you just have to keep an eye on that. I say the hen, normally is the hen, because they're the ones that produce the messy poos. Right, so that's the breeding cage then. You know, that's my standard setup for each of the breeding cages, so just basically all the birds will know what to expect when they go into the breeding cage, or if they get moved between one breeding cage and another. Right, nest boxes then. So the nest boxes, and you can see one of them behind me that's on cage number 1, that's been fitted to there. So I use wooden nest boxes, partly because, you know, it was all I could really afford when I first started setting up, and they have on the whole worked reasonably well for me. I know some people will use plastic nest boxes, and I think there are pros and cons to both of them. So, you know, whatever suits you best. Plastic are obviously easy to clean, but I've heard that they tend to hold moisture a bit more than the wooden ones anyway. So so I use the wooden nest boxes, and like most breeders, I use box in box type, and you can see them here. So the box in box type nest box, all that means is that there's one small box that's the inner box that slides inside the outer box, and it just makes getting to the birds much more easier in terms of accessing them, so that you can you know, do things like checking the eggs, or check basic checks on the nest box, eggs, cleanliness, chicks, easier to ring, that sort of thing. So that's the type of nest box that I use. In terms of preparing the nest box, I do 2 things really. So that you would have seen that I've thoroughly disinfected these from the end of the last season. So they are clean, but they have now been stored in the main shed for a little while. So what I do now is I will respray them with an anti-mite spray. So this is the anti-mite spray that I use. You've seen it. I've got a bottle of it. I'll show you it in a clip. So that's what I do. I will spray the nest box again with that, just to make absolutely certain. It also helps protect it against mites coming forward, going forward. And the other thing that I will do with the nest box is I will dust it with this, I think it's called diamitrous earth. Anyway, so it's like a talcum powder type stuff, and I will make sure I dust it with that, and I use a small brush to brush it into all of the crevices of the nest box. So that will go onto there, and that's my basic preparation for the nest box prior to it being hung on the cage. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I will normally leave about the birds in the cage without a nest box attached for about a week. As I said, it does depend on pair to pair, but about a week. And then I will add the nest box. The cages that I use have a door that allows me to add the nest box to the outside of the cage. I know if you're struggling for room, then you might want to put them inside the cage. That gives you more room in terms of the flight, because obviously if they're on the outside, they're sticking out. But it also makes it slightly more difficult for checking. So I attach them to the outside of the cage to the small door. And in terms of attaching them, the nest boxes have these, they're basically little hooks, metal hooks that I've fixed to the nest box myself, and that literally just hooks over the top of the, or one of the wires, top wire of the breeding cage, and then it allows the nest box to fit snugly against the side of the cage. Now, the only real issue is you see that the nest box that you can see in this particular clip, or in the clip, has got a I suppose a little perch on the outside, so it allows the hen to be able, or the hen or the cockbird to be able to look in, hen to look in when she first comes to the nest box, the cockbird to feed the hen and that sort of stuff. The only problem I have is that the wires on the cages are quite tight together, so it becomes quite difficult to fit that particular perch through. So some of them will have them, some of them won't. I found, in all honesty, that whether it's on there or not makes no difference to either the hen or the cockbird being able to access the nest box. So sometimes I think it's more for us than for them, and I can understand it in a main flight because it allows the cockbird to sit there and protect the front of the nest box. But in the breeding cage, I don't find it makes a lot of difference whether they're fitted or not, and I've got some that have got them and some that don't. So that's just the way they are. Let me know your thoughts. But I find it doesn't particularly matter whether they're on there or not. Right, so that's the initial preparation. Oh, I did say I have the nest box closed for about another week, 3 days to a week. And I mentioned earlier my reasoning behind that. And in order to close the nest box, it is literally just a matter of taking the inner out, turning it around and putting it in the wrong way round, basically. So I can instantly see when I'm looking down the line, you can see the one behind me, I can instantly see which nest boxes are closed and which nest boxes are open. Right, so that's the preparation and fitting to the cage initially. What about the final bit when I'm going to open the nest box up for the hen to be able to access it? Well, before I move on to talk about how I open the nest box up to let the hen into the nest box and the process that I use for that, I just thought I'd say a big thank you to all those of you who take the time to watch these videos and to comment on them. In the last video I asked about which pair you thought was likely to come out best, or which pair you like the most, and I think the consensus seemed to be that pair number 2 was the one that most people like. So we will of course keep an eye on that pair and see how the youngsters turn out if that dominant pied hen finally decides to go down to nest this year. As you might remember, we have had some problems getting her to actually to start laying. So touch wood, hopefully she will start laying this time. If you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, and thanks for those who long-term subscribers and those who have recently subscribed to the channel. If you're not yet a subscriber, then please do subscribe, and don't forget, if you want early notifications, then do hit the bell. I produce these videos every week, so if you want your weekly bird keeping fix, then do hit the bell, and of course subscribe. Don't forget to comment. I do answer all the comments, and all those people who comment on a particular video get mentioned at the end of the following video. So please do feel free to comment on anything you've seen in this video or any other videos, or anything you'd like to see in a future video. And while I'm on that subject, I did have somebody comment and ask about if I could do a video covering how I go about scoring the birds, because you know I've seen my scoring system. I did show you how each of the birds came out. I did do a video on that a little while ago, but I will perhaps in the next video we'll run through how I go about scoring the birds. There's a young hen in the main flight that is in the process of molting out, and I mentioned it on the Shed Talk Facebook page, that I thought she might be quite a nice bird. So perhaps we'll get her out and have a look at her in the show cage, and I will quickly run through, or I'll run through in the next episode, how I would go about scoring that bird and my birds in general. So thanks for the person who made that comment and made that suggestion for a future video. Like I say, any ideas, please do let me know in the comments section. Right, it is just about time now then to open up the nest box on cage number 1. Okay, so it is now time to open up the nest box from cage number 1, and I follow so that nest box has been already, been dealt with as I did the other nest boxes when I added it on there. So it's already had its anti-mite treatment. It's been on the cage now then for about a week. I think it is virtually a week since I put it up. You might remember the hen on this one tried to get in there straight away. She still shows quite a bit of interest in the nest box. So hopefully when I open it up, she will start exploring it quite quickly. But before I do that, I need to do the final bits for it. So So what I will now need to do now is to take the nest box off of the back of here, and I need to start prepping it. Now I do this, I add the bedding into a small container, and hopefully you'll be able to see it in the short clip here. So I add some bedding into there, and then on top of that I add the anti-mite powder in there as well. So, and I mix that quite thoroughly through, so that there's a good dosing of anti-mite powder in amongst the bedding. That really is just a precaution. I will also re-dust the nest box to make sure that the anti-mite powder has got into all of the corners of that nest box, and then I will add the bedding into the nest box, and as I do that I continue to mix through the anti-mite powder into there. Now you can see I fill the nest box quite full actually in comparison, so it is reasonably full. I think what the hen behind me I think is actually having a look in the nest box now I've taken the inner out, so hopefully when I pop it back in she will come straight in. Right, so as I was saying, so I mix it through. The nest box is quite full, and that serves a couple of purposes. What I'm going to do is I will pop this back up there now. Now I've prepped it. There we go, and hopefully the hen, you'll be able to spot the hen behind me having a look in there. She was definitely interested in going into the nest box. So as I say, so I've put the nest back on there, and the bedding is quite full, and that serves two purposes from my point of view. So first of all, it encourages the hen not to just go straight in there and just sit in the nest box. So it gives her something to do. She'll come in and hopefully she will start sorting that nest box out as she would do in the wild, as a wild budgerigar would need to do when it's excavating a hole. And you will find that she'll start kicking the nesting material out of the nest box, so out through the nest box hole in most cases. So, you know, there are some lazy hens, but in most cases she will start picking it out. So that, again, a bit like when we have it shut and she's gnawing on the outside, will help, in my opinion. It just helps her to bring her into condition, stops her from sitting on there, and as she goes in and out, the cockbird will become more and more interested in her, and hopefully will encourage the two of them to start to pair up and mate, which is what we all want, isn't it, in order to fill those eggs. So, so she will start doing that. And the other thing that it does is, as she clears the nest box, I can see, first of all, that she's been there, because the bedding will have been disturbed, so I definitely know she has been in there. And secondly, I could see the nest box material out on the bottom of the cage, which again will indicate to me that she's been in there and started to clear it, which means I don't have to disturb her too much. So that's the reason why I top the bedding up quite full. If she empties it, I will pop some of it back in there, normally until she starts laying. So I will, and then once she starts laying, I will then leave it with however she's found it, unless she's emptied it completely, in which case I would add a small bit at the bottom to stop the eggs from rolling around. Right, so that is how I, you know, open up the nest box and prepare the nest box for her to go in there. Next steps then, from my point of view, what I'm looking for now from this is early signs that she's been in there, as I say, and it does look to me like she's going to go in there quite quickly, and hopefully that will encourage the cock to mate with her. Obviously I'm looking to see if the cockbird starts feeding her and any sign that he starts treading the hen. And then the next major indication that she's about to start laying is that, of course, the hen will start to produce those slightly bigger poos. When she does, I'll get some clips of them, because they are fairly obvious, that, you know, and that's just that indication that she is about to start laying. Right, so that's opening preparing the breeding cages, preparing the nest boxes, and opening the nest boxes up. Right, that's about it then for this episode. As I say, in the next episode, hopefully, we will have a look at how I go about assessing the birds, as someone requested in the last video. So we'll go about looking at how we're doing that. But, and finally, before I go, don't forget, this weekend will be the start of the major fireworks over here in the UK. I know we had Diwali a little while ago, so but the major fireworks will be this weekend and next weekend, the 2 weekends that cover the 5th, and of course the 5th in between. So don't forget, radio's on a bit later, leave your lights on a little bit later as well, just to help them to, you know, ease the stress of those fireworks. Right, that is the end of this video. As always, till the next one, do stay safe, enjoy your birds.